Hello, everybody, and happy Thursday, and welcome to your daily lighting critique. Diana just asked me a question, and we wanted to get on recording. Diana, could you repeat your question, please? Sorry to make you do that.
Yeah, I was just wondering about how render layers are set up at Blue Sky or wherever you can shed some light on them, whether the characters were on their each character was on its separate layer. Like, are there prop layers or are characters and props that interact with each other put on the same layer? Stuff like that.
That's a great question, and you're actually exactly right. So, generally speaking, we would render each character separately, and separate from the background, and then if the characters interacted, if they shook hands, if they embraced, if they had any sort of touching component, we would render them on the same layer. It's beneficial to render things separately because you can have more control over them, especially when you're doing like depth of field stuff, because it gives you a nice clean alpha around each one. If layers are rendered together, they get stacked on each other, and then you're asking the composite to pull the depth data from the Z depth, and that can have a little bit of a different edge than the nice clean alpha. That was our general approach. Each character rendered separately unless they interacted, and then the set or the environment rendered separately. We would also render the environment separately if it was very heavy. If you were in the woods, a big city, you do like set foreground, set midground, set background, and kind of break them up into chunks. And we would also, towards the end, when we were developing new systems, we were doing AOV breakouts as well. Specifically on the last film that never got made, but we were doing a unique style of that one, and that required breaking AOVs out separately and kind of reassembling them. You would break them out separately, process them in different ways, and put them back together because it was a non-photoreal look to it. But that was, and I still kind of work that way. Like if I this is a great example, right? this shot here from Ubaid. Like if it was me. And this actually is very interesting because the cards here in the foreground are all part of the character because it's his 8 tentacles wrapping around. So I would do it one of two ways depending on how it was built. If the character was just one piece of geometry and I was unable to break out those separate components, I would render the character with the table all in one set. In an ideal world, I would render these foreground tentacles separately, the table separately, the background tentacles with his head, and then everything back behind it. It's like 5 different, I guess, 1, 2, 3, 4 different layers. If you wanted to render his head, let me just count those out so you can kind of see what I mean. So this foreground stuff would be 1, this would be 2, this midground stuff would be 3, and then everything back there would be 4. Just because it gives me a little more freedom, I can kind of push and pull the values a little bit so that we can kind of zero in on the background there. On the character, I mean. Does that answer your question, Diana?
Yeah, it does.
Great. Ask a follow-up. Yeah, it sounds like you have a follow-up. What do you got?
I do, but I'm thinking about it. So when you're lighting a shot, and then you would have lights for the character and lights for the set, but would they generally influence other things as well? Like the character lights would influence the set as well. And
yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So you would have lights that would influence the different area. Like from my that's my layer breakout approach. My lighting breakout approach is I try and keep the lights. My first pass is always no light linking, keep it as clean as possible, as close to reality as you want. Like one sunlight, a skylight if we're outside, keeping everything kind of roughly in the same thing, in the same light rig, because all of those secondary influences matter. And if you start breaking things and you start messing with them, it can start to break down pretty quickly. So I usually like to wait to do that until the end. Ultimately, what would always end up happening is because when I'm doing that, I'm paying attention to the set more than I am the characters to make sure that the set is lighting correctly, and then I'll just render like that would generally be my first day, would be lighting the set in a way that makes it look good. And then I would just render a low res test overnight to see how the characters performed within that lighting setup. 99 times out of 100, the character didn't look that great. So then I would go in the next day and create a rig that was based on the environment rig, but just like modifying it slightly so that the character itself looked better. So it wasn't like, I would keep the skylight the same on the character and just slightly move the position of the key light so it looked better on the character that way. That was kind of my plan there, was to not start breaking things until I was sure that I needed to do it. But like there were films like Peanuts where there was a specific look that they wanted for every element. Charlie Brown's hat had to look a certain way, his coat, his shoes, his pants. And for that, we actually pretty regularly would break out light rigs, not only for each character, but each one of their garments. Because that was a more stylized look, it would work. But I would say that was a unique situation with that. But we would have, I always tell the story, like when we first started that project, I was worried that I was going to be out of a job because I was like, man, it's just a comic book. It's just going to be, we're just going to put a toon shader on it and call it done. And that ended up being probably the most complex show that I lit on, with like the sheer number of lights. I think there were sequences with 400, 500 lights in it because you'd have a crowd of kids and each kid would have a key, bounce, fill, rim associated with each one of their garments, and it was mind-boggling. But you got used to it after a little while. But that's
crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy. But then for Peanuts, was the look in the render similar to the output, or was the template also?
No, for that one, that's a good question. For that one, the look in render was pretty similar to, because we didn't have the capability of doing AOVs with the proprietary renderer that we had at the time. We couldn't even really separate spec from diffuse, so it was more we just developed custom shaders that looked that way, custom lights that provided a certain look, and then we would do minor tweaks. But yeah, that was pretty close to how it looked in render, and that's kind of one of the things you don't think about. But when you're doing non-photoreal looks in CG, because all of these renders have spent years, decades, creating algorithms and setups where that mimic the way that light functions in reality, and that's great. And it's great for most circumstances, the way that like secondary light bounces off stuff and there's glow. But if you're trying to create something that's a little more of a flat aesthetic, you like need to break all that stuff and you need to turn all that stuff off, and sometimes that requires more work to turn that down than anything else. So the non-photoreal stuff is a lot of fun because it forces you to break everything. Like I tell this too, that friends of mine that worked on Spider-Verse, like listening, because I didn't see anything obviously, but just listening to them vaguely talk about the project, it just sounded like a nightmare. It was just like nothing from the render we can use, and we gotta like figure out all these different things to do with shadows. It's gotta look like a comic book but still be a movie, and then you saw it and you're like, guys, this was amazing. They're like, oh yeah, it was real hard though. Yeah, so that's kind of my setup for lighting breakouts, even for non-photoreal stuff.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right, cool. All right, let's start hopping into some images here. All right. So first up, we have Ubaid, and this is a shot being rendered in Unreal Engine, so that's very cool. And he wanted to show it in motion to kind of get an understanding of like how this will look, and then it looks like we've hit some notes from yesterday, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but it looks a little bit darker towards the base, more focus on the characters and all that good stuff. I would say the darkening down towards the bottom, I think it's a great idea. I think we've just overcranked it a little bit. I think we've now pushed it a little bit too dark. I would want some light to still penetrate down there, but I think you're getting into a better realm. And the other thing that's nice about that note is I actually think that the light on the main character can actually get pumped up a little bit. So I think that will work out well. Now, in terms of the shadows, because I love the idea of shadows creeping across the main set here from the light source. But I have two things with the way the shadows are now. Number one is their position. It feels to me that the light source is back here, like back behind him, because that's the way that the sky is kind of brightening towards that point. Although looking at his face and looking at some of the things, it feels like the lighting on the character that the sun is actually behind camera. So I'm wondering if either is fine. We can work with either. But I think that that we should either adjust the background so it looks like it's kind of away from the sun, and for me, I think I would actually move the position of the key light back behind the character a little bit, because I think that he becomes a little bit more dynamic when it's more of like a rim light situation on him, and like you can then get some god rays coming in this way from back behind. Let me just draw. It's hard to get that perspective, but like god rays coming in from behind him and kind of creating a cooler setup there. The other thing about the shadows is I just think they're too hard. I think seeing like the exact cutout of the leaf, because light as it passes through water gets thrown all over the place. Like it hits the surface. Like if you think about, like I'm looking at a window right now, the light passing through the window actually gets softened quite a bit, and that's only on a thin sheet of glass instead of like a thick amount of water. It just gets broken up in there. So you just don't generally see very tight shadows. But yeah, those would be my big notes out of the gate. Do you have any questions about that, Ubaid? Are you available? Okay, it was kind of hard to hear you, but I think you're okay. Does anybody else have any thoughts on this? Any notes? The other thing was, and I just don't know enough about underwater life to know if this, because to me it feels like a lot of bubbles floating around, and I think it's cool, but it's just, you have to be careful with stuff like that, because then it could trigger someone into thinking it just feels like their aquarium at home. You know what I mean? So just be on the lookout for that. But I love all the fish passing by. I think that's great. I like the motion of the plants. It's cool too. But yeah. Those are my main notes for now. But and then we can take a look from there. All right. Let's hop over into some still images here. Okay, cool. So first up we have Cat. So Cat, we've turned off those pieces of paper that I thought were light squares. We've got this nice softening here. The wrap around her arm looks really good, around her face. I
got highlights on the hair, and I brightened her up overall too.
Yeah. I think this is looking pretty good. I wonder. I'm just gonna take a look here. I wonder if there isn't still just a little bit more room for a little bit more brightening. And then just a touch more brightening. And then
overall, or just on a certain part?
Mostly on mostly on the key light stuff. Mostly her, because I just slid it for everything, and and it doesn't actually really affect the darks that much, but it would mostly be just the stuff that's being hit by this central area of light. Dress looks great, and then my only question is, or my only thought is, I love the level that we're getting on her arm, and I think that looks really nice. I just wonder if we can't also, lift it up overall a bit, but just like this little part of her face, like this little square, I would love for that to get a touch brighter too. That actually just, but I think it's just, and this is just like those like minor tweaks at the very end, because we're very, very, very close.
Okay, I think the same light that I have for the dress area you want brightened, I
Mhm.
think it's the same light for her face. So I think if I brighten all of it, it'll be
Yeah.
fine.
And then and if you need to boost it just that last little bit, because
But
really,
should I
really
put
it should
boost
be
it with a
okay. Sorry.
I was just saying, should I boost it in the light or should I just boost it and comp with like a color correction
I think you
or
should.
extra brightening?
I
Hmm.
think you might have to do both, but I think you should boost the light like like a small amount, just like 5%, and then once you
Hmm.
get into the comp, if you're like, you know what, because and the reason why I say you might have to adjust in the comp too is that the arm is brighter than the face, and I want them to be about the same value by lifting the
Okay.
face up. And if you just increase the light, they'll both come up together, and they like we won't bridge this gap with the face to the arm. So I think just
Okay.
bumping it a little bit, and then just making the face a little brighter. And then also, yeah, the face, and then just this front part of her hair, just so it's a little bit brighter than what's back here. But other than that, I think we're good. Does anybody else have any thoughts on this? One of the things that I really,
Just think it's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's looking great.
Yeah.
I love
Thank
the
you.
composition of this image. Yeah.
Thank you.
yeah,
I appreciate it.
no problem. No, this is really great. And then, yeah, 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 that's all. I mean, yes. The other thought that I had, which I don't think you should do anything about, was that I wonder if more light would naturally pass through this dress and hit the bed. But as I was thinking about that, I was like, no, I actually like the contrast between the bright dress and the dark surroundings. I like that a lot. So yeah, just really, really great stuff all around, Kat. Really beautiful.
Cool. Thank you. I will tweak that today and post it for tomorrow.
Yeah, and I think we're close to clapping. My hands want to clap.
Whoa!
Yeah.
Finally,
this
I finally finished one.
is no, it's a good feel. It's a good feeling, man. All right. We will go to you know what, Stephanie. Let's see. We will come back to you. We will go to Justin, and then we'll come back to you, Steph. All right. We have the just to get our mind around some reference. We're looking at Chappie reference for the robot, and it's a cool design. We have the previous version here, and actually we'll go and stack them so we can just do a quick A/B test because it makes it easier to see the differences. Very cool. So this is the new. This is the previous. Justin, you want to talk a little bit about where your motivations were?
Yeah, just trying to get the characters to stand off of the background a little bit more, so that's why I kind of lightened up. Those pipes were just getting a little bit too dark overall. And then for the robot, I just kind of starting over because I wanted to do Chappie originally,
Yeah.
and then I just got so far from it, I was like, oh, I just need to start fresh. So I just kind of started fresh on this one, and I actually like it a lot better.
Yeah, I do too. I'm wondering. Well, we'll see how it plays out, but I don't know if it's better or worse that because the one thing that was nice about the biggest difference is that this one had a couple different color schemes. Like there was like the black spine versus the blue, where the newer version is a little bit more monotone in its color palette. So I'm not sure how that's going to play out over time. I think it'll be good. This looks more realistic to me. This looks like a more robot-y to me, but we'll see. My other concern is how dark the robots on the ground are, and I'm wondering if are you doing the same material adjustments?
Yeah, I'm gonna do the same. I just didn't update those ones yet.
Cool.
Yeah.
Then then I'll leave it at that. I think everything else is looking pretty good. I really, really like. I thought I would like the darker pipes, but the one thing I really like about the brighter ones is like just looking over here to the screen left hand side. Just like look how the colors are rolling off of that in a really beautiful way. It's like these nice blues that were rolling into the nice neutrals and the nice oranges, and the same thing kind of happening over here. And I just think the brighter pipe color, the lighter pipe color really helps us get that feeling coming from the different spaces. I think your bright point on these lights back here is looking pretty good. I think maybe just eventually softening the edge of it, only because in this lower res version you can see the kind of stair-stepped edges around it, and we just want to make sure to put a little light glow or edge bloom or something, or edge blur on that to soften that edge a little bit. Anybody else have any thoughts on this? Yeah, I think it's looking great. Color scheme is good. I love her orange popping off that blue background. And I remember the way that her outfit looked on the close-ups too. It's really, really nice. So good job, Justin.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah. All right, Stephanie. So this is the previous. We'll do the same thing. We'll stack these. Biggest things that we were focusing on were kind of narrowing the light to create more of a focus on the character, creating more light and dark values. I think I like this light coming in this way. It's interesting actually, because I was like, it's a little off center where like the beam of light is like here to here, and then usually the character's kind of, you know, like more like dead center in that, and in this case the axolotl is a little bit off to the side. I actually I don't mind it because it's almost like the axolotl is like emerging from the space. The things that I would do a little bit the things that I would tweak on this is I do think that we've got room to make. We don't have much room on the character, but I do think we have room on the environment to make it a little bit brighter. You can see it clips out the character pretty resoundingly, but I think there's some area back here to make that a little bit brighter. And then the other thing is I want to feel a little bit more like as we brighten that, I do want to feel a little bit more bounce underneath the character, because I feel like bright light would come down, hit some surfaces, because this is a smaller space. It's an aquarium. Axolotls aren't very big, unfortunately. Unfortunately, because I just want to give them a hug, and they're not big enough to do that. But we've got light shining down here, hitting in this small space. I do feel like there would be some more light bouncing up underneath the character here. And that will really help, because what's happening now is we've got green light up underneath the character that's kind of washing us away from the hero color, and kind of putting us in a not great spot. The other thing that's interesting about this character is I think this is the first time I've seen him with kind of human-y eyes. And he's very googly-eyed, which I wasn't expecting. It's very cute. But I'm wondering, it just changes the read on the character itself, in that it's kind of like looking in two different directions, which makes it seem kind of silly and whimsical. I'm wondering if, I don't even know how to do it. Like, if the eyes were more forward-facing or something. I don't know. Do you guys have any thoughts on the eyes? I don't know if you can see them on the screen share, but they're interesting.
I just thought they weren't so green. Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Good.
No, yeah. Yeah, and the other ones, his eyes are just like that, but
I thought his eyes were like black, or do they? Am I crazy?
No, I think they are, but there's also like a little yellow, like a slight translucent.
Actually, we can look that up here. Yeah, I can't. Man, it's been a while since I've looked at them.
Yeah, it's like a little button. But yeah, these are also the most protruded I've seen them.
Yeah, they're like more out facing or something.
Yeah,
Something.
sure.
Yeah, he's an interesting. Yeah, I guess it is. You know what? Yeah, that's what it is. It's like we're not seeing
The
like,
shadows.
Yeah. Yeah,
Under the eye.
and it's also like we're seeing like a white of the eye too. Yeah, I think the geo might be getting messed up. I think let's like maybe actually physically push the geo back into the eye a little bit. And then the other thing with looking at some of these, like one of the things I really like this, and this is a similar color scheme, is I like, and you can see me kind of doing it here for a second. I like how we kept this hero color, this kind of very pink color on the character, because it allows it to stand out from the background. And I see what you're doing is being more realistic and actually honestly more true to how an axolotl actually looks, in that they're not quite that saturated. But I would try and maintain this like rich pinky hue, and even to the point where we could pick up the freckles on the nose and stuff. But yeah, and then same thing we were kind of talking about with Ubaid's is that just because I can see the shadows from the eyes right around here. Just make sure that the light quality has got a pretty big radius because it'll be nice and soft in there. As the light passes through water, it just gets diffused and bounced around. Yeah, and then with this light coming in and adding some more bounce light in here, I actually think it'll bounce up and back in there as well, because everything from this point over feels a little bit flat in that it's all kind of the same value. But if we got some bounce light up in there, maybe a little fill light to kind of add some more shaping, I think that'll help a lot. It won't be much because we want to maintain that darkness to allow the character to pop out from it, but I think that'll be good. And we could play around with too at some point, adding maybe a little bit of a kind of a kick or a rim light from on the screen left of the character to get him to back to get the character to get her to bounce off from the background or pop off from the background a little bit. Yeah, but good stuff overall. I think this is looking really, really nice. Do you all have any thoughts? Anything else before we break for the day? Cool. All right. Well, you all have a wonderful Thursday, and I will see you tomorrow. All right. Be good, everyone. Talk to you soon. Happy lighting.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.